Good morning, everybody. Have you ever heard of Dragonlord? You probably have. It's been out for a while. And I made a video talking about how cool it can, in fact, be with a two-handed fighting Dragonlord. But, what if we want to do something more and make a character that's pretty cool with some cool powers? What if we wanted to make a character that was actually very good? And so today I bring you that character. This is the swashbuckling Dragonlord that has a heavy focus on Shadar Kai. There's a existing build out there that is referred to around my channel as the Critzilla, which is a build where you get hand axes, you mix it with Frenzied Berserker Barbarian and Bard, and Shadar Kai Chain, allowing you to press the chain attack and pretty much delete every single thing in a room. Now, the Dragonlord does share a similarity with the Barbarian Frenzied Berserker in that both of them get +2 critical multiplier. So I thought, hey, if Barbarian works well, I'm sure the Dragonlord probably also works well too. And I think works well is a bit of an understatement. It's kind of insane. There were multiple circumstances where I could press a single button on the keyboard and do 100,000 damage. And that just feels really, really, really good. And this character is also not even that difficult to put together. In fact, if you farmed out any of the gear from the last build, it uses basically the same gear as an introductory set. So what makes this character so special, and why does it work a little bit better than the Barbarian? Well, the main thing is that Dragonlord is all about crowd control. Having access to that Dragon's Roar is actually really crazy for this build. See, a Barbarian is able to crowd control stuff either by focusing on Dire Charge and picking up something like that in Epics, maybe grabbing Trip or some other type of crowd control, or even using Tantrum out of the Frenzied Berserker tree. But the problem with all of those is that either Dire Charge locks up your epic strikes, you can't use something that's higher damage, Tantrum basically doesn't last, and Trip and other things don't really cause helpless damage. However, the Dragon's Roar does, as it allows you to cower enemies, and it's a frontal cone, and it's on a short cooldown, and you can just blast it whenever you want. On top of that, it also kind of works on everything. As a result, it's so incredibly effective at prepping your enemies for the chains that come in afterwards. Being able to just Dragon's Roar onto a group of enemies, have them all freeze up, take extra damage, and then go chain attack, guess what? They're all dead. And you get to get away scot-free with loads of experience points and loot. On top of that, fighters just get a lot of good defensive stats. You get more feats, you don't get as many hit points as barbarians, and you don't get the passive flat damage reduction, but you do get second wind, which is dramatically helpful in this build, just able to quickly pick you up in the middle of a fight if you're playing outside of Reaper mode, and even in Reaper mode, in between fights, just get you back up to full. Another benefit of this character is you're not raging. The reason why that's actually kind of nice is that the original Critzilla build, being based off of a Shadar Kai, you have a level of Rogue, allowing you to disable all the traps in the whole game. However, if you're playing as a Barbarian, you want to be raging because raging strength is very, very good, and while raging, you can't disable traps, meaning you have to constantly do the thing where you drop rage, and then you go get your toolkit, you then go disable the trap, then you have to re-rage to go back to fighting. With this character, you have none of that because you actually can't rage. By using the Strength Trance, it actually disables rage, so you're not able to rage at all. And as a result, instead of raging, you just fight monsters, and then when there's a trap, you disable the trap and get more XP for you and your whole team. There's also a weird quirk. There's an ability in War Chanter for Bard called Scaldic Rage, and this ability is usually not very good for a lot of reasons. The main thing is that Bards generally don't need strength, so it's not super helpful here. And also, if you're playing a regular Barbarian, this doesn't stack. So even though with the regular Critzilla build, you could get Scaldic Rage to get even more strength, that doesn't work with regular Rage. They don't stack together, they're the same type of bonus, so it doesn't function. But remember, the Dragonlord version isn't allowed to rage, so you can use Scaldic Rage, which might sound kind of weird. Scaldic Rage is not a true rage. It doesn't count as disabling your spells or anything, disabling your spell casting, which is what actual rage really does. Instead, this just gives you additional strength, so you get 4 extra strength on top of what you would normally get, with pretty much no downside whatsoever. 4 strength isn't amazing, but hey, it's not nothing, and it's pretty nice. This character was so unbelievably easy to level and play, I basically didn't have to focus at all. I pretty much spent the entire time just talking to chat, even when I was doing like R7 to 10s, it was so easy to play, but it gets even better, because the second part of this character that I wanted to test out was the new and improved Quick Cutter. Now for those of you that don't know, Quick Cutter is a attack that you can get from the epic Destiny Fury of the Wild, and there's 2 main attacks. There is Adrenaline and Quick Cutter. Now, for Fury of the Wild's epic Destiny history, Adrenaline has kind of been the big bad ability that everybody's wanted to use. It allows you to hit a guy, you auto crit, and you do a gajillion zillion damage. I don't need to explain why Adrenaline is good. That's pretty self-explanatory. However, Quick Cutter was a alternative that they wanted to add for like multi-hit or fast-hitting characters, with the idea of you activate Quick Cutter and you get the quick buff, and then while you have the quick buff, you get extra dodge, and then also if you have the quick buff, if you activate Quick Cutter a second time, you apply Cutter, which is like a bleed on the enemy that has a lot of damage on it. The problem, as we discussed in the last Dragonlord video, is that anything that has prep time is kind of bad in DDO, in all difficulties. Even on the hardest difficulty, monsters just die too fast. It was almost impossible to get Sunder Soul to work, which is an instant kill with no save on enemies. Now imagine you're trying to apply just a regular bleed with Quick Cutter. Obviously that doesn't work, it's too slow and it's too clunky. So it has been revised, so now Quick Cutter is a 360 degree double hit attack, so it hits twice, just like Whirlwind Attack. But on top of that, it has extra critical threat range, so it crits more often, and it gives you both Quick and Cutter all the time, so it always gives you the defensive buff of the dodge, and it always applies the bleed. This makes it kinda crazy. If your character has no area of effect, you can just use Quick Cutter. Generally, when somebody got to epics on a melee character, I would recommend they either use the Fate Singer Epic Strike to just get some free damage right away, or to go into Adrenaline. But now, Quick Cutter is actually just such a crazy option, it's really hard for me to say that there's a single character class that shouldn't use it. Like, if you're playing melee and you have a melee weapon, you're probably always going to think about Quick Cutter in the back of your mind, especially if you're like a single weapon fighter or two weapon fighter, a character that just doesn't inherently have any AoE built into it, not like the two-handed fighters with Strike Through. Overall, it was extremely impressive and adds a gazillion damage. It's so good, you even use it against a single target because the extra bleed that you apply is just really, really strong. I can definitely recommend Quick Cutter, and if you haven't tried Quick Cutter yet as of watching this video, go try it out on whatever your melee build is. You will be surprised by how powerful it is. But enough blathering about how good this character was, how easy it was to level. You probably want to play it for yourself. So now I'm going to pass it over to me with the build. Dragonlord literally only gets better with single weapon fighting, and I can highly recommend it to pretty much everybody. If you watched the last Dragonlord build and you were like, man, that looks cool, what if you did more damage and had more AoE and attacked faster? And that's where Shade Archive Dragonlord comes in. This character is not a pure Dragonlord, which means you don't get the cool ability that I used in the last build, which was Sunder Soul, which instantly kills stuff. It looks cool and it feels cool. However, instead, you get like a bazillion damage, which is pretty sweet. So you get to pick up Spike Chain Attack, Greater Spike Chain Attack. We're rocking Quick Cutter over here. We're rocking Legendary Rally over here, which was technically in the first build. I just forgot to use it. And this character does a ton of damage. You probably saw in some of the clips. Those are either in raids or R10s. And so where your damage in raids obviously is higher, and in R10s your damage looks much lower. But damn man, did it feel good. So let's go over just a little bit here, what exactly makes this character a lot better. Specifically, we're talking about the difference in the feats, which comes into play with some of the combat styles with the single weapon fighting. The reason why it gets so much better is because this character can scale a lot of damage elements at the same time. Good amount of strength for damage, but then also out of Dragonlord, you're able to pick up +2 confidence most critical multiplier with all weapons, which is nice. You had that with the two-handed sword before, or if you were using a falchion, which is what I recommended in a lot of cases. But then there's also swashbuckling, which gives you +2 critical threat range with the hand axe. It's this unique place where, because there's only range on swashbuckling and no multiplier, these two things stack, giving you a hand axe that goes from a 15 to 20 with a ×5 multiplier. It's a gigantic number, meaning you crit all the time for a lot of damage. And because you attack quickly, you get to see it all the time, and because you have AoE attacks, you don't care too much about the fact that your character is not always critically striking, or that the base damage might be a little bit lower, because you can just press Greater Spike Chain, and then everything within a tri-state area gets instantly ripped apart. It's absolutely fantastic. So this build is a little bit different. It's also a Shade Archive, so it starts at level 15. If you want to play this build and you're not a Shade Archive, you can. It's just a lot slower and worse, so I would definitely recommend doing it as a Shade Archive. There's no plus Heart of Wood here or anything, and this character build can disable traps if you have a trapping item on your character. I don't have any right now, but if I grabbed one, I would be able to. The idea is you start at 15 with 11 Dragonlord, 1 Rogue, and 3 Bard. Leveling will, of course, be in the description there. And you take most of the feats. The build is less tanky than the other Dragonlord build. I'm missing one piece of gear, so it should be capped out on the magic resistance rating, but it's not as directly tanky in terms of the amount of hits it can take compared to the other build. However, it does have capped dodge at 28%, which feels quite good on a character like this. Going into Reaper mode, I get extra dodge, so it goes up to 30%. And then on top of that, you can always tumble, which gets you a little bit of a get out of jail free card, launching your dodge from minus 28% up to 95%, which is pretty good. And I have a lot of tumble charges built into this character. Additionally, when it comes to the enhancements, it's a bit of a swap around because you want to spend all your points in Shader Akai here. I do spend the points in Swashbuckler to get access to shields while swashbuckling for the extra dodge, and so I can benefit from some of the shield feats. And War Chanter Scaldic Rage. Now, there's an effect here that gives you extra stats based on your strength called Might and Order. Cannot be used while rage. It gives you extra bonus to your attack, damage, and DC of tactical feats based on a strength modifier, but you can't use it while raging. However, Scaldic Rage is not a real rage. It gives you a rage bonus to strength, but doesn't count as a real rage. You can cast spells while you're Scaldic Raging, so you actually don't have to worry about the downsides of it. In fact, not only do you not have to worry about the downsides, you can press Scaldic Rage to rage, and then press Might and Order, and it counts. This is not a bug, because this is not a true rage. Things that give you increased stats while raging, so like there's items that have increased strength while raging, don't affect Scaldic Rage, because it's not a true rage. This is just for free strength on your build, which you'll make good use out of, which is pretty nice. As far as Epic Destinies goes, this character is similar to the last one that we're still using Dreadnought. However, the benefit here is Quick Cutter. Quick Cutter is the strike. I love this ability. Honestly, it's probably even better on the last build to use Quick Cutter. This button is so good. You press it, your guy does a whirlwind, you go whee, and then it kills everything around you. It's harder to describe it better than that because you're going to press it and go whee, and everything dies, and then it's going to be off cooldown way faster than you think it is, and it kills everything. Quick Cutter way exceeded my expectations. Absolutely beautiful ability. Huge, huge, huge fan. If you're a First Life character, you don't have all the points to spend in these trees, so you just cut some out of Fury of the Wild, which I do have in the First Life friendly version of this build, that again you can find in the description. And then the item set is pretty much exactly the same that I used before. The only change is that I'm not a Warforged, so we're using the Mana Weave armor, as opposed to the, I can't remember what the docent is. And then also, you can get the legendary Azure Buckler here for the bonus Forbidden Knowledge set, as opposed to the two-handed weapon. And then you can use whatever hand axe you want. You could use Char if you want to, because you think Char is cool and you just want to have it for the set. You can use the Magmatic Reaver, which is a fantastic item. You can use a Dinosaur Bone hand axe, which is also a fantastic item. All three of those are acceptable. Those are the best weapons in the game for this type of build. In my personal opinion, Magmatic Reaver versus the Dinosaur Bone hand axe. I think Dinosaur Bone is going to win out most of the time, but Magmatic Reaver is cool and has some good effects on it, so they're both pretty good. Char is probably the worst option, but I'm using Char because I had it, and it's cool, so that's kind of why I went with that. But again, items will be in the description there. It's pretty straightforward. Honestly, this build is just a strict improvement. It's just faster, better, stronger. Everything about it is better than the old build. The only thing that you miss out on this build is the same level of crowd control. Unfortunately, this character does not get like AoE trip. It's a single target trip, so if you want to trip something, you can, but it's a single target, unfortunately, which just doesn't have the same oomph. So you don't feel like you have as much control over the battlefield, but the damage is so much higher. Sometimes instead of crowd controlling something, you just delete them. You just delete them from the whole video game. You just say, hey, do you exist? Guess what? Whoop! Now you don't. And whatever you're attacking just takes 35,000 damage. Turns out they can't take that much, and they're gone. And you always have the Dragon's Roar ability here to lock down monsters when need be. So overall, this build is pretty much just strictly better than the last one. The last thing that makes it sad is, of course, you don't get access to Sunder Soul, which is a really cool animation. But unfortunately, it's just a little bit too clunky for me to consider using all of the time. I think that this build, or this attack is very cool, but it's something you're not going to see a lot of widespread use throughout the game because of its limitation that, well, you just don't really have the time to wait for somebody to go, Sunder, and then use a follow-up attack, especially when this button right here, the Quick Cutter, kills everything in one hit. But anyways, that's all I have. So thank you for tuning into this update on Dragonlord. We'll be back next time with another build that may or may not have Dragonlord. I don't know. I have my chat voting on the build, and I don't know what one. So we're going to check it in a bit. Thank you. Bye-bye. Brush your teeth. See ya.